I look back on the last 4 years and I think to myself, were any of these people happy under Biden? Because they were still acting like this, except now it's ramped up because they didn't get what they wanted. So, I don't know, I have a tendency to believe that some of these people are just miserable, and they choose to be miserable about their politics day in and day out. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for stopping by, and if you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe. This really helps the algorithm, and I want to keep bringing you content like this because Voices with Vicky really was created for the underdog or for those who really didn't feel like they had a voice or a way to express or give input. And I find that people have a lot to say, and I want to keep bringing people on like that, as well as have conversations like this, like I'm going to do with you today. It's been a crazy week since Trump became the president-elect. And I've seen so much insane stuff on social media, and it's actually been sad, to be honest. And I wanted to share some of that with you today and find out from you guys if you're seeing similar things or what's going on. One of the memes that I found when I was scrolling through Facebook, and for some reason a lot of it's on Facebook. I mean, I know it's coming from other places too, but maybe it's just me, I don't know, but Facebook seems to be like where it's at for like the insanity. So this came from like some pro LGBT website, and it says agreeing to disagree applies to coffee versus tea and pineapple on pizza, not my basic human rights. What are we talking about? What basic human rights don't you have? I guess what basic human rights do you feel are being threatened? I see a lot of people talking about Roe v. Wade and then them saying that they're going to go back to the drawing board, the Supreme Court is, and they're going to overturn uh, same-sex marriage as well. And, I feel like there's always going to be dribs of drabs of things like that being said, especially from hyper conservative groups. And it's always going to be a thing and it's never going to go away. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Don't know that people that have a really big fear of same-sex marriage being overturned truly understand how the Constitution works, how Supreme Court rulings decisions are made, and that it really isn't that easy to just overturn rulings. There is a case called Obergefell versus Hodges, and that was a landmark decision of the Supreme Court that was made back in 2015, and it ruled that the fundamental right to marry was guaranteed to same-sex couples in all 50 states. And that was by both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. It's a very different case, very different circumstances, and what was applied to that versus what was applied to Roe v. Wade, two separate things, and I don't know why we keep sort of trying to mesh them together. That's the only thing I can think of as to why someone would bring this up and talk about your basic human rights. It has to have something to do with that. It has to have something to do with this same-sex marriage thing. The only other thing I can think of is that it's about like trans stuff and about like kids transitioning or trans women in women's sports. And so those are the things that are on the chopping block, so to speak, right? So what is the issue? What are your basic human rights that you're actually lacking? Other than that you're afraid that they're not going to let children transition, why would you be letting children do that? Or about trans women in women's sports. I've also heard rumor that Trump actually wants to make it so that being trans is completely outlawed. I also don't believe that to be true. I think what he said was he doesn't want to promote gender affirming care in federal agencies at any age. And when you stop and you think about it, like, why would you want that promoted in the federal government?
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures, and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states.
If you're an adult and you're trans, or you think you are and you need to deal with that, that's cool with me. Why would the federal government need to be involved with that? Or better yet, why would you want them to be? It's a private matter that you go to your therapist and you go to your doctor for. And I think it's just been pushed way too hard on the woke end of the spectrum when we have other things to be dealing with. Like, it's not all about that. It's not all about LGBT all the time. People tend to talk in hypotheticals, especially in the TQ plus category. They talk about how their lives are in danger and that there's some kind of genocide and that there's some kind of eradication going on. Where? When I was 16, I had somebody come into my workplace and tell me that I was going to hell for being gay. And they humiliated me. They made me feel like crap about myself. I was a young girl. I was only 16 at the time. And, I was just starting to discover who I was. I had hit puberty. And when you're in your late teens, duh, you start to figure it out. This woman was some kind of Bible thumper. She was screaming at me, telling me I was going to hell at my workplace, of all places. This was over 20 years ago that this happened. These types of things happened on a regular basis to people back then. They do not happen ad nauseum in that way anymore. They just don't. I mean, I'm sure there could be stories out there of people doing ridiculous things, but we actually have more protections now under the law, especially when it pertains to your job and your workplace, and that you can't just be fired for being gay or trans or discriminated against in that way. I think the youth is really lost and they don't understand what discrimination actually means. I don't understand this whole victimhood culture that we live in today. When I was coming up as a gay person, I wanted nothing more than to just blend in with other people and be left the hell alone. So we're living in a strange space right now, and a lot of this stuff just needs to stop. People are over it. This is why Trump got elected, again, because the victimhood strategy and the moral superiority thing that we've got going on is just that one really starts to make me mad, to be perfectly honest with you. So this came from a site that is supposedly about positivity and change. And it says, on January 20th, everyone wear black. This is supposed to be the party of diversity and inclusion and love and happiness. And all I see is darkness. All I see is sadness and depression and shame and hurt and fear and all the negative terms that you could roll up into one. That seems to be like what the far left has become. And just everything's about mourning now. Everybody's in mourning over this. It's very, very dramatic. People are free to do what they want. If you really want to go do that, go do that. But you're not hitting the way you think you're hitting with people. And it's just so negative and nobody wants to be around it. Like, I mean, even on The View the one day, I think it was the day after the election, a bunch of the people on The View came out wearing black. I mean, what are you doing? And then people are putting like the black circle on their Facebooks, and it's like, I don't know. But anyways, I just think the whole like wear black on January 20th. Like, we've had him as president before, and I know not everybody likes him, and I didn't like him back in 2016 either. And I think that a lot of people have seen the light, and Democrats are leaving the party for valid and specific reasons that actually have little to nothing to do with Donald Trump at all. And that's the part that some people are missing, or they're like deliberately and foolishly ignoring. And instead, they just continue with the same narrative about racism and various phobias and sexism. And it just goes on and on and on with that. And I can't believe some people just continue to dig in their heels. And I mean, at this point, knowing what we know about mainstream media, what a joke that's become, how much we've been manipulated and lied to by them, and understanding the condition of our economy and between the wars and the border and all the post-COVID issues, I'm finding that people just want to hate this person, and they don't, even when they're presented with other facts or other things that you could have healthy discourse and debate over, they don't care. They hate this man by choice at this point, because I've even tried to engage in thoughtful and kind conversations with people about this, and they just will not hear it. They only show up to try to prove a point, to look smarter, or to confront me about something. You said this. How could you say that? You said this before. Yep, people change their minds. People grow and learn and change, and that's a good thing to change your mind. That actually is a sign of intelligence when you stop and you think about something that you were doing previously and you said, you know what, I think I actually understand why the other side might feel this way about this or this way about that. I have friends that are Harris supporters that voted for Harris, and obviously I've got neighbors that voted for Harris. I have family as well, and I find that the people that really care about you are not going to care how you voted. And I've tried to tell some of these people that they keep doing the same thing again and again and again, and they're expecting different results, and it's becoming a little psychotic in appearance. And that is what's scaring me about all this. I look back on the last 4 years and I think to myself, were any of these people happy under Biden? Because they were still acting like this, except now it's ramped up because they didn't get what they wanted. So I don't know. I have a tendency to believe that some of these people are just miserable and they choose to be miserable about their politics day in and day out. And as I said previously in my other video, when Trump first won, one of the first things that came out of my mouth was that I was fully prepared to come on here and talk about how Harris won the election and that we have the first woman president, and what do we think about that, and what do you think she's going to do? Is she going to destroy things, or maybe there's a silver lining here, and maybe there's things that she might do well? I was fully on board and prepared to do that because that's life, and this was an election and it's over. But this other particular group can't seem to do that. They just have to continue to fear monger and hide in the darkness and mourn over things and not look inward or look at their party and say, why the hell didn't we win? So, I mean, Joe Biden, he didn't do her any favors either. And I don't know what's going on with him, but, he said basically that Trump supporters are garbage.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
And think about it. Think about it. Almost 75 million people voted. It was over 50% of the vote. So at the end of the day, again, remember who lost this election and who actually needs to stop projecting and figure themselves out. Because there are gay people coming out in droves for Republicans, people of color, trans conservatives. We're seeing so many people switch it up. And that's the question you have to ask yourself. Why are they changing their minds and going for Trump now? What? That's something that we've been trying to explain, but as soon as we try to explain it, we either get screamed at, called names, shut down, blocked. So it's like you want the answer, but you don't want to hear the answer because you don't want to hear the truth. Because look at, I mean, even Obama was chastising black voters over not wanting to vote for Harris. I mean, well, yeah, in what world would people want to speak up and be like, yeah, I don't want to vote for her, when you're going to like put people down for who they vote for? I mean, I'm not saying anything to my friends that I know darn well voted for Harris. That was their choice. That was their right as a citizen of this country to do that. So this came from that Positive Change for Everyone site. And it says, on Wednesday, my husband ordered this, and it now has pride of place in front of our home. And it's this little flag that has a very interesting looking rainbow on it with a upside down triangle. And that is kind of freaky to me. I don't know. This stuff is just looking more and more cultish to me lately. And it says something about this is a safe space. I guess that's what it says. I don't understand this. Like, I don't understand why. I don't know if it's a moral superiority complex or what it is that's making these people think that they need to go put these things on their front lawn for gay people and trans people. But I don't need a safe space. Like, I'm not living in third world. I'm not living in a place where I don't have, protections under law for myself that were granted many, many years ago. I don't get it. Like, something like that would have made sense when 20 years ago, when that woman came into my work and was screaming at me for being gay. It would have made sense to have something, a safe space thing like that. And it did exist on some level, actually. When you saw people with rainbow flags 20 years ago, it was almost like a secret code. A lot of people still didn't even know what the rainbow flag was all about. So if you saw one at like a, at a store or something in the window, it would be like a little tiny one down to the side or on the door. You knew, like, they were gay maybe, or they understood you, and you felt it was actually quite liberating, and it felt good at that time to have that. But it's not needed in the same way anymore. Now it's a corporate capitalist agenda that a lot of these people claim to hate the capitalism, but yet they're eating it up all over the place with this rainbow stuff. And again, going back to this safe space thing and people having to put that out there on their lawns, we are not victims. We don't need coddling. We are not weak. We are strong. So it's not some requirement, and it's not making you, look amazing either. You should just accept people for who they are. You shouldn't have to put weird flags on your lawn to prove it. I don't get it. I don't know where they get this stuff from other than like super left news that keeps feeding them and telling them that, gay people and trans people are so oppressed and it's so terrible here in the United States, and oh my God. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And it's so frustrating. Oh my God. I didn't realize how exhausting this was going to be. Ugh, this one really bothers me. White conservative evangelicalism can do all the rebranding it wants, but it will look nothing like the Jesus it claims until it repents of its relationship with the unholy trinity of patriarchy, white supremacy, and religious nationalism. So basically, what I see here is white people are bad, white Christians are bad, patriarchy, really bad, religious nationalism. I don't know. To me, it's just a bunch of word salad about that white men and the patriarchy are so terrible. And I don't get it. I don't get this patriarchy thing as if it exists in this really rampant, like ridiculous way in the US, because it does not. We're looking at places like Afghanistan, Syria, South Sudan. Those are the places that have patriarchy, guys. I don't understand why you're still trying to use this as an argument that's our main problem here is patriarchy and white nationalism. Someone wrote this actually, and I was just sad. I don't know why this stuff makes me so sad. I think it's because they've become what they claim they hate, and that is narrow-minded, right? And at face value, you'd think, oh, they're using certain words. How could they possibly be narrow-minded? But I thought of my biracial nephews and niece when I voted yesterday. I thought of all people and their rights rather than voting as a privileged white woman. I was able to forgive you for making a mistake last time, but not again. I don't know who this person's talking to, if they're just like talking at whoever voted for Trump. You should have educated yourselves with actual facts rather than listening to lies. This thing with privilege describes your incorrect assumption that a problem does not exist simply because you have never experienced that problem personally. Oh my God, this was the thing that I was telling you that everybody else is sick of. We're so sick of hearing this. And actually, this moral superiority statement that she makes sounds very privileged, actually. I thought of my biracial nephews and niece when I voted. I thought of all people and their rights rather than my own privileged white woman rights. Really? How privileged of you. I was able to forgive you for making a mistake. See how they're elevating themselves above other people? Like they're in the position of power, right? I was able to forgive you for doing something that I don't believe was the right thing, even though it literally is just a different way of thinking about something than the other person. You're putting everybody in the same category, and that's the most narrow-minded thing you could possibly do. So I think this is the last one. Again, this was something somebody wrote. Again, 4 years later, have to do this. Oh gosh, what an inconvenience. If you voted for Trump or support that side in any way, please unfriend me. God, not this all over again. I thought people were going to be a little less like ridiculous. I mean, I remember not liking Trump at all, and I felt at the time that I had valid reasons for it. And I think I would totally get into it with people, and I remember sort of being sucked into a lot of those things. And it was during COVID that much of that occurred with me. So I was just completely insane because I lived in New York and I was forced to basically completely isolate. And I think that had a lot to do with people being completely deranged. But I snapped out of it. These people are like still in it. Or make yourself known so I can unfriend you. Already deleted 3 today and need to remove all of the cancerous ignorance. Oh my gosh, how morally superior of you. Thank you. This is why you lost. It's this attitude. It's this choice that you make to only want a monolith, to only want lockstep thinking, to only want a same type of group think. The way you're going about dealing with this and coping is not coping. This is lack of coping. A lot of the things that I showed today are people who are unable to get past something because they don't have the skill to do it, the coping skill to do it. Guys, let me know in the comments what you think about these interesting statements that were made and memes and whatever. And please remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks a lot.